The Galactic broadcast opened with the sound of wind chimes, soft, almost melodic, playing beneath a woman's scream. 9 billion screens. 9 million women. One empire. They called it the day of purification. The opening feed showed rows of human women lined in sterile, blue-lit arenas, their arms restrained, eyes vacant. Some were teachers. Some carried unborn children. A few wore medals from Earth's last war, their lips tight and proud even now. Every sector tuned in. Every alien tongue called it justice. Joseph Beckett didn't speak. He sat alone in a modest room on Europa Station, steam curling from a porcelain teacup on the polished steel desk. The lights were dim. The only glow came from the projection, stills from the executions playing on loop like a lullaby for monsters. The walls bore no flags, no emblems of state, just silence, deliberate and cultivated. A chime interrupted the footage. He didn't look away. "Sir," said a voice behind him, young and unsure. The transmission was confirmed in all major systems. 72 trillion witnessed it live. Joseph gently set the cup down. "Did we record their cheers?" "Yes, sir," including the applause from the Hyvenari and the laughing gestures from the Zarn Collective. Timestamp everything. Log species, reactions, and proximity to imperial authority. Tag every spectator who smiled. The age shifted. "That's most of the galaxy, sir." "I'm aware." He stood slowly, buttoned his coat, and brushed imaginary lint from his sleeve. His voice remained soft. "Are the Hecate ships in position? They've been awaiting your order for 6 years." Joseph's gaze remained fixed on the last frame, a woman with one eye swollen shut and the words Mother of Earth tattooed across her collarbone. She had stared at the drone until her final breath, unmoving. "Begin," he said. The aide paled. "Begin what, sir?" Joseph finally turned, his smile polite, controlled. "Extinction." The boy didn't ask again. Far from Europa, the Empire's newsfeed shifted. Commentary rolled across channels, terms like righteous cleansing and historical turning point. Alien pundits debated the so-called human overreaction. Some suggested Earth would sue for reparations. Others laughed and predicted surrender within the week. No ships left Earth. No protests. No diplomatic pleas. Just stillness. That night, a single message pulsed across deep space. Earth acknowledges transmission. Record preserved. Galactic leaders scoffed. Acknowledge? No retaliation? How very human, full of sentiment and sound, but ultimately soft. On the 4th day, a freighter docked at the Valari diplomatic station. It was registered as a civilian transport, unarmed. No escort. No escort needed. The Valari were insectoid creatures with glassy eyes and fast-spinning tongues. They had led the Public Execution Committee. Their High Chancellor, Clicktalk, welcomed the guest with a wide grin. "Ah, Earth sends apology," he hissed. "Late, but still appreciated." Joseph stepped onto the platform wearing a dark three-piece suit, his hair slicked back, no weapon in sight. "No apology," he said. "Just a conversation." Clicktalk laughed. "Ah, Earth loves talks. Talking while dying. Come, let's drink fermented root and remember your women." Joseph tilted his head. "You remembered them during the executions." Clicktalk didn't hear the quiet weight of those words. Most never did. Inside the banquet hall, alien officials dined on delicacies from across the quadrant. Their laughter bounced off marbled walls. They debated spice ratios and planetary bombardment strategies like scholars sipping wine. Joseph stood, calm and distant, listening. Then, at precisely 2,200 hours Galactic Central Time, the stars outside shifted. No sound. No alarm. The Valari moon Curax vanished. Not exploded. Not shattered. Gone. A black scar where it had been. Clicktalk blinked. Did you see that?" "Yes," Joseph said, sipping his tea. "Curax is no longer in orbit. Malfunction." "No," he placed the cup down. "A correction." Clicktalk sputtered, clicking in panic. "That moon held 3 million Valari, civilians." Joseph looked at him for the first time. His voice carried across the table. "So did our daughters." The room chilled. Laughter faded. Somewhere a fork clattered. You monsters," one reptilian official whispered. No, Joseph's expression never wavered. "You've mistaken us. We're gardeners." Click-tock trembled. "What does that mean?" Joseph leaned forward, hands folded like a schoolteacher. "It means we prune what threatens the root." Back on Earth, the sky glowed red not from war, but industry. Quiet engines powered up beneath the oceans, from inside moons long assumed lifeless. Every colony awakened. No anthem played. No president made speeches. They remembered. The transmissions continued to replay in some parts of the galaxy, out of pride, out of cruelty. But those channels began to go dark. One by one, their satellites were found melted or sliced into perfect rings, still spinning. Reports surfaced of entire fleets going missing. Not destroyed, missing. Communication ceased. No debris. No distress. Only silence. In a council session on Dirax, 3, Senator Ulvin of the Threxian race pounded his clawed hand on the marble floor. "We cannot let these primitives reverse the tide. Earth is a single planet." A junior Threxian aide leaned close. "Respectfully, sir, they are not." "What?" "They seeded colonies during the peace accords. Thousands. Hidden. Dormant." Ulvin snarled. "They were farmers and poets." "They were preparing," the aide whispered, "for this." On the 7th day, a diplomat from the Lorgan species requested emergency parley with Earth. They broadcast a plea for peace to every human frequency. Only one reply came. Joseph Beckett, seated in a leather chair aboard the Alethea, looked into the camera and smiled faintly. "I understand your confusion," he said. "You thought grief would break us." He let the silence hang like a loaded weapon. But grief forged us. Behind him, stars twisted as the Alethea folded space without warning. The move violated 56 galactic laws. The Lorgan transmission was severed. No more messages came. The galaxy, so proud in its silence during Earth's mourning, now found itself engulfed in it. The silence of disappeared cities, of stars that no longer gave light, of ships floating with no crew, only recordings of that first broadcast playing on loop, on every wall. Back on Europa, Joseph received a report. 212 systems neutralized, sir. He nodded. "Make it 1,000. The aide hesitated. Are we still calling this retaliation?" Joseph stared at the final freeze frame of the woman, with Mother of Earth tattooed across her throat. "No," he said. "This is memory, written in ash." Then he stood and walked toward the briefing chamber. The lights dimmed behind him. The stars outside flickered. One last alien message blinked on the screen. "What do you want?" Joseph's reply was simple. It echoed not in words, but in the absence of them. Because Earth wasn't asking. Earth was erasing. And somewhere, in a quiet room at the edge of a dying star, a child from another species looked up at her father and whispered, "Are the humans coming here?" The father, once proud, could not speak. Because they already had. The gardens of Valeth Prime were designed to humble visitors. Suspended between twin suns, the floating diplomatic fortress boasted sculpted crystals taller than ships, gravity-defying waterfalls, and silk-petal flora that sang when touched by wind. Every alien empire sent an offering here, a token of cultural pride, like insecure children showing their best toys. And in the center, beneath an arched dome of starlit glass, stood a long obsidian table, a relic older than most of the species gathered around it. It was where peace had once been declared, where Joseph Beckett now stood. He arrived in silence, wearing the same dark suit as always, a single black ribbon pinned to his lapel. No entourage, no weapons, just one man among titans. Earth has lost nothing but dignity, hissed Chancellor Koflen of the Zarn Collective, her gelatinous form shimmering green in the ambient light. "Your restraint is admirable. But we wonder, when will you grieve properly?" Joseph stared at her, the faintest smile touching his lips. "Grief is not a ceremony for us. It's preparation." Laughter rippled around the room, high-pitched, hissing, hollow. To most, Joseph looked like a diplomat come to kneel at the feet of power. Some pitied him. Others feared the weight of his calm. Only the oldest among them, those who had read Earth's deep history, watched with growing unease. Grand Regent Valak of the Alisari, an antlered creature with glass bones and sapphire eyes, leaned forward. And what, exactly, does Earth hope to gain from this visit? Joseph took a single breath. Perspective. Gasps followed. A minor breach of decorum. The translator drones stuttered before correcting. Still, the word hung in the chamber like an unsheathed blade. Perspective. Valak echoed, tone clipped. On whose funeral? Joseph's eyes softened. Yours. The silence that followed was absolute. He stepped back, requesting a walk through the council gardens. A ritual courtesy granted to diplomats, even disgraced ones. After brief hesitation, the regents agreed. Curiosity always had been their weakness. They followed him, some hovering, some gliding, some slithering, as he moved through sculpted archways lined with bioluminescent trees. Joseph paused by a fountain shaped like a collapsing star. Its waters moved in reverse, upward. Beautiful. Useless. There are flowers that only bloom after fire, Joseph said, more to himself than to them. I used to think that was poetry. And now, asked Click-Tock, clicking nervously beside him. Now I know its strategy. A sharp tone sounded in the distance. It was subtle, barely audible, but every military mind in the group turned. Skyward, a glint formed over Valetha's second moon. Another Earth freighter? Someone sneered. Joseph turned to face them fully for the first time. Not a freighter. Across the galaxy, in sectors far from the pomp of the council chamber, ordinary aliens stared skyward. Some noticed stars blinking out. Some noticed time delays in broadcasts. Others simply vanished before they understood what was happening. The Hecate protocol had awakened. Back on Valeth, Joseph extended his hand politely. Shall we observe a moment of silence? For what? Someone barked. Joseph nodded skyward. For the second sun. With no warning, no visible beam or energy signature, the second sun of Valeth dimmed, then collapsed. It didn't explode. It imploded elegantly mathematically. A black sphere now hung in its place, pulling light and breath and disbelief into it. The council lost composure. Valak howled in a tone never heard before. Click-Tock staggered. Kothlin liquefied into a pile of shivering green panic. You killed a star, one shrieked. Joseph clasped his hands behind his back. We buried our dead. Then we prepared our sermon. A red light blinked once on his lapel. Confirmation. The Hecate fleet had begun its synchronized strikes, over 100 planets, silently severed from existence in less than a minute. No noise. No gloating. Just absence. What are your demands? Cried a sulfur-blooded Tarlock general. What terms do you bring? None, Joseph said. Then why are you here? He smiled again, soft, almost sorrowful. To watch you remember. At that moment, a new signal entered orbit. Unregistered. Unmapped. And then another. Then 3 more. Joseph looked up, as if greeting old friends. The regents stared at the sky, helpless. That's impossible, whispered Kothlin. Valak backed away. Those signatures, they're ancient. That tech was banned. Joseph exhaled. It was forgotten. We remembered. From the dark sides of moons, from the silent belts of forgotten asteroid colonies, Earth's contingency fleets rose, sleek, white, without names. They bore no flags. Only the same symbol, a cracked hourglass inside a circle. The emblem of memory, of endings. Each vessel broadcast the same audio, a loop of the original execution footage, muted, grayscale, with the words "We remember" etched across the screen. Click-Tock wept. Truly. His mandibles quivered with despair. We didn't know. Yes, Joseph said. You did. Another light blinked on his lapel. Earth had taken out the relay networks near the Andari core, cutting communication across 8 quadrants. The council members turned to flee, but the exits had sealed. We'll give you planets, one screamed. Resources. We'll disband the empire. Joseph tilted his head. You think this is about planets? Valak stepped forward, trembling. Then, what do you want? He met her gaze. The silence of those who laughed. The chamber fell into madness. Some begged. Some cursed. Some tried to kill him, only to find their weapons frozen, overridden remotely. Joseph walked to the center of the garden and tapped a small device from his pocket. It projected a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with bright red spots flaring like wounds, each marking a vanished colony, a glassed moon, a stolen woman. He tapped again. The red faded. Now the map pulsed blue. Hundreds, no thousands, of dormant Earth outposts revealed themselves, hidden for decades, embedded in trade hubs, cloaked under old mining rights and diplomatic leases. Click-Tock gasped. You were never weak. Joseph's voice was calm. We were waiting. He turned toward the main council monument, a towering obelisk of alloy and pride. Earth's symbol wasn't carved into it. Never had been. He reached into his coat and pulled out a single coin, pressed it into the stone. It stuck there, glowing faintly. What is that? Someone whispered. A funeral token, he said. For the galaxy. He looked around at the remaining council, at the once proud alliance of empires who had called themselves eternal. Your mistake wasn't killing our women, he said, voice low. It was broadcasting it. Then he stepped back, and the coin detonated, not as fire, not as destruction, but as a pulse. Across the stars, every alien who had watched the execution, who had clapped, laughed, or even stood by, felt it. Not death. Memory. Injected into their minds like a second skin. Every scream, every face, every life ended, burned into their dreams. Generation after generation. Written into their blood. Back on Earth, the skies were quiet. Oceans reflected unbroken peace. But in space, the final war had already begun. Joseph walked away from the council chamber as the stars blinked out, one by one. Not fast, not loud, just gone. And somewhere on a quiet freighter in deep space, a child watched the stars vanish and asked her captain, "Are we next?" The captain, an old soldier with more scars than medals, looked at the human symbol now etched on their dashboard. I think, he said, we were first. The galaxy braced itself for screams, and none came. In the aftermath of Valetha's collapse, empires waited with claws unsheathed, navies prepped on hair triggers, and battle scribes dusted off ancient war declarations meant for apocalyptic conflict. They prepared for fury, fire. Threats shouted from the mouths of wounded men. But Earth said nothing. No declarations. No ultimatums. No demands. Only a peculiar, chilling quiet. And silence, as it turns out, makes monsters of those who listen too closely. On the far rim of Sector Threx, Commander Elgar of the Plith Dominion stood on the bridge of his battleship Cold Gift, surrounded by brass and bravado. He watched the holographic galaxy spin with too many blinking red holes, dead zones where human contact had simply stopped. No distress signals. No signs of attack. Just vast swaths of absence, like teeth missing from a smile. They're cowards, Elgar muttered. They're afraid. Are they? Asked his science officer quietly. Elgar narrowed his eyes. Report. We've tracked 7 vessels, white, unmarked, ghost silent. They move against gravity wells, hug null space, shift like wind. We don't understand the drive. Elgar scoffed. Spectacle. Psychological warfare. Another officer stepped forward. Sir, they don't jam our scans. They just seem to already know where we're pointing them. That gave Elgar pause. On the other side of the galaxy, inside a drifting monastery ship that doubled as a library of war, a withered Zorlan monk named Trelvu listened to ancient Earth recordings. Human war poetry, tactical logs, children's songs. He turned each over in his mind like blades. Why do you listen to them, Elder? Asked a younger monk. Trelvu's voice rasped like wind over bone. Because no beast roars in the hunt. It breathes slow, steps soft, and when it pounces, the forest forgets every other sound. The younger monk looked confused. But what does that mean? It means, Trelvu whispered, I'm afraid it's already too late. Above the pale ice world of Dorix II, a convoy of 10 alien ships arrived to resupply a forward fleet. What they found was a graveyard, 25 dreadnoughts adrift. No bodies, no debris, just smooth, silent hulls floating in tight, ritual-like formation. Every ship's internal clock had stopped at the exact same moment. On each bridge, a message burned across the command console in perfect standard. We are not here for conquest. We are not here for peace. We are here for memory. And you are now inside it. Fleet Admiral Kezaren of the Kethari Alliance nearly choked when he saw the footage. They're mimicking our formation codes. These are ceremonial arrangements for funerals. Only high-ranking Kethari are buried like this. They know our traditions, murmured his aide. No, Kezaren whispered. They study them. In a backwater cantina on Vez Prime, a group of bounty hunters swap theories while drinking smoke blood and biting into meat that remembered its screams. One told a joke about how humans cried when their women died. The others laughed, until a human in a dark coat finished his drink and quietly laid a coin on the table. A coin engraved with Earth's motto, "We forgive. We remember. We erase." The laughter died. The human didn't speak. He just walked out. An hour later, the cantina vanished in a localized collapse of spacetime. Not a single scream recorded. No evidence left. Only a crater where the laughter had been. Still, no broadcast came from Earth. The Galactic Council convened in what was left of its temporary core, half buried in an asteroid belt salvaged after Valetha's collapse. They demanded statements, begged for clarification, wrote long-winded apologies that no one would read. The ambassador from the Felner dynasty, ancient and bloated with pride, thundered, "We command Earth to answer. Silence is an act of war." To which a human diplomat named Sarah Lynn, calm as a wintertide, replied, "Our war ended when your applause began." One sentence. That was all. No additional transmission followed. No official declaration. Just the map of galactic space, shrinking daily. Joseph Beckett, aboard the Alethea, moved like a man already past grief. His tea never cooled. His words never rushed. He reviewed reports from silent agents across 1,000 systems. No names, just initials. All of them had waited for this moment their entire lives. Some had married into alien bloodlines. Some had raised children with smiles hiding the knives underneath. And now they were harvesting memory. Across the black, human warships drifted like myths, unmarked, untouched, unreadable. Some carried entire forests within them. Some were disguised as derelict stations. One had been parked inside a pulsar field for 60 years without detection. Earth had not built an army. They had planted it. They called it the Hecata Lattice. Not a fleet, but a nervous system. A whisper network of vengeance. And its heartbeat was silence. Back on Dirax 3, a council assistant ran into the chamber holding a black box. The last data transmission from an intercepted Earth ship. The aliens hovered around, trembling with hope and horror. The box clicked open. A projector glowed. A single recording played. A human child's voice, maybe 6 years old, reciting something between a nursery rhyme and a vow. When they took the light from Mama's eyes, we wrote her name across the skies. We don't yell. We don't cry. We just remember. And you don't get to forget. Then static. Then darkness. At that moment, 23 alien vessels blinked out of hyperspace near the Arcones trade spine. All were destroyed before they even completed a single scan. No flash. No fire. Only silence. Some species tried to surrender, falling on ancient codes of war. Joseph never responded. The elder diplomats pleaded with surviving Earth channels, sending gifts, translating old Earth lullabies into their own languages, reciting them like spells. One alien, an Eldrex noble, cut out his own tongue live on broadcast as an apology. Still, Earth said nothing. On a jungle moon with no name, a human woman knelt before a hand-built grave. No soldiers around her. No tech. Just dirt and the wind. She laid a white ribbon across the stone and whispered her daughter's name. Behind her, 3 alien prisoners watched through the bars of a shattered transport ship. They expected mercy. Or at least a speech. The woman never looked back. She just walked away. That night, the forest swallowed them whole. Aboard the Alethea, Joseph received a final package, an ancient datapad, pre-war era. On it, a list of signatures, every name, every claw print, every blood mark from those who voted for the execution of Earth's women. The datapad glowed red as it verified identities still alive. Only 17 remained. He stared at it, thumb hovering over the command. Then he looked out the window. The stars no longer looked like wonders. They looked like teeth. "We were never loud," he murmured. "But you all should have paid attention when we stopped talking." He pressed the key, and across 17 corners of the galaxy, 17 lights blinked out, one every second. Deliberate, like the tolling of a bell that no one could silence. On a distant asteroid research post, an alien child watched the flickering news feeds. Her species had stayed neutral. They'd watched, said nothing, done nothing. Now, even their moon trembled. "Father," she whispered, "why didn't the humans answer?" He swallowed, his voice raw. "Because they already had." And in orbit above them, a white ship, without a name, cast its long shadow down. The last surviving seat of the Galactic Empire wasn't a palace or a fortress. It was a scarred, half-buried conclave on Vorthan's cradle, a dying planet whose oceans had long since boiled dry. The building had once been ceremonial, designed for celebrations and treaties. Now its ceilings sagged with ash, and its golden walls were pitted with plasma burns. Once a place for joyous declarations, it now smelled of rust, sweat, and fear. The war had moved past Vorthan without touching it. Not out of mercy, out of design. In the great council chamber, 12 beings sat in silence. Not leaders, survivors. Generals. Diplomats. Engineers of domination. They had once boasted of taming galaxies. Now they whispered. "The humans have offered parley," muttered Chancellor Javier, his 3 eyes flicking toward the others. His gills flared as he spoke, the wet suck of air the only sound. A lone representative. "Another trick," spat Kratos, a spike-covered brute of the Valari Forgeborn. "They send shadows and riddles." "Why speak now?" "Because we're the only ones left," murmured Lyran, the glass-skinned diplomat from the old Olissery Corps. "They've erased the rest. It's not war anymore. It's inheritance." No one responded. They all remembered the signals gone silent. The worlds that had simply stopped. Once, each of them had commanded fleets and demanded tribute. Now they were ghosts beneath cracked marble, clinging to relevance by fingernails already bleeding. The door opened. Joseph Beckett stepped inside. No guards. No escort. Just the same black suit. Same polished shoes. Same ribbon on his lapel, faded now, as if the morning had aged with him. 12 pairs of eyes, some milky, some glowing, some compound, watched him take the central seat once meant for the Emperor of Stars. He didn't ask permission. He didn't wait. He sat like the seat had been carved for him. "Earth acknowledges the Empire," he said calmly, voice unraised. "We accept your surrender." Kratos laughed, a brittle sound. "We haven't surrendered." "You have," Joseph replied. "You just haven't said it aloud yet." Silence. Heavy. Sharp. Chancellor Javier inhaled, fingers trembling. "Why are you here, Joseph Beckett?" He looked at him. "To offer mercy." Several heads turned. "Mercy?" Lyran leaned forward. "After what you've done, after the moons you silenced, the systems you glassed, the cultures you burned from history." Her voice broke. Joseph's tone didn't. "You showed us how little a life was worth. We remembered." A rasping hiss echoed from the back. A withered figure moved into the flickering light. Zalrith the Decider, architect of the Execution broadcasts. Once known across sectors for her ruthlessness, she now needed a frame to hold her upright. Her voice scraped like gravel. "You are vengeance." Joseph blinked. "No." "Then what are you?" she asked. He looked around at the 12, the broken pride, the ash-covered crowns, the architects of genocide now hiding in stone ruins. "I am what happens when memory is sharpened long enough to cut." The chamber fell into hush again. Joseph reached into his coat and withdrew a small sphere, silver unmarked. He set it gently on the table. "This is the Mercy Protocol," he said. Kratos scoffed. "A weapon." Joseph tilted his head. "No. A door." The sphere pulsed once, then projected an image mid-air. A map of the galaxy, no longer marked in red or blue, but gray. Dead worlds. Vanished populations. Systems folded in on themselves. Not scorched. Forgotten. "You erased them," Javier whispered. We remember them, Joseph corrected. And then we unremembered you. The concept sank like a stone into water. Not death. Worse. Oblivion. No record. No mourning. Just deletion. We can't negotiate with ghosts, he said. So we made you one. Lyran rose, voice shaking. Then why come at all? Why speak now? Joseph looked at her, and for a moment there was sorrow in his eyes. Because we never wanted this. You lie. No, he said. We hoped your species would break, would cry, would say the executions were a mistake, that grief mattered, that something in your collective conscience still flickered. He leaned back, and the shadows gathered under his eyes like clouds before thunder. But you laughed. You made reaction videos. The words hung heavier than any weapon. So we gave you the silence you gifted us. And now, he said, nodding to the sphere, you have one choice left. A single option blinked into view. Accept mercy. What is it? Javier asked. An exit, Joseph said. We allow you to live, to remember, to raise children with truth. Zalrith coughed hard. You'd let us rebuild? No, he said. We let you vanish somewhere quiet. No power, no reach, no name, no voice. One planet, one language, no stars. That's exile. Lyran hissed. That's mercy, Joseph said. Kratos slammed a fist into the table. And if we refuse? Joseph didn't flinch. Then I activate the oblivion seed already planted under this floor. Javier froze. You're bluffing. Joseph just looked at him. The council's translator drone projected the biometric feed from Joseph's heartbeat. Steady. Flat. Not bluffing. Panic rippled through the chamber. Javier whispered something to himself in an old tongue. Lyran clutched the edge of the table like it could hold back extinction. Zalrith, however, smiled. I see you now, she rasped. Joseph turned to her. You're not predators, she said. You're surgeons. You don't just kill. You excise. He said nothing. And your silence, she continued, coughing again, blood at her lips. It's not mercy. It's certainty. That's why you came. To tell us it's done. Joseph stood. Not quite. The sphere beeped. 10 seconds remained on the choice. He looked around one last time. This is the moment that defines your species. Not your fleets. Not your archives. Not your throne worlds. Just this, whether you know when to be quiet. Whether you know when to sit still and not die screaming. The timer dropped to 5. A collective, instinctual breath was held. At the last second, Lyran slammed her palm against the projected symbol. Accept mercy. The sphere stopped blinking, then disappeared. The chamber remained still. No explosion. No beam. Just the faint sound of the wind outside through fractured walls. Joseph turned toward the exit. Where will we go? Lyran asked behind him. He paused, one hand on the doorway. There's a world in the Azuran mist fields, he said. It's quiet, fertile, unclaimed. You won't be found. Javier's voice cracked. What do we call it? Joseph looked over his shoulder. Graceless. Then he stepped into the light and was gone. 3 days later, the final 12 of the Galactic Empire were relocated. They were given tools. Seeds. A copy of every atrocity they'd ever committed encoded into their atmosphere. So even the wind would remember. No transmissions left their new world. No graves were dug, for there was no one left to mourn. In a room on Europa Station, Joseph Beckett stood alone again. A new suit, a new ribbon, same silence. His aide approached. It's done, the young woman said. The stars are quiet. Joseph stared out the window. I wish I believed in ghosts, he murmured. She frowned. Why? Because maybe then they'd hear the women again. He picked up a final file. A single name. A child who survived the original broadcast. A girl now grown. Trained. Waiting. He handed the file to the aide. Tell her the galaxy is ready. For what? He turned, eyes darker than space. For something new. Outside, the stars trembled. And Earth, finally, slept. But far below, in the midst of a new world, 12 broken things looked up at the sky, wondering when the silence would stop. It wouldn't. because there were no graves left to dig, and Earth would never forget.